This child drew a map to his past life's grave. Then they dug it up. Crayon broke in half as 6-year-old Lucas pressed too hard against the paper, his small hand trembling with an urgency that made his mother's stomach clench with worry. For the past hour, he had been hunched over the kitchen table, drawing with an intensity she had never seen before, muttering words in what sounded like a foreign language. When Maria Santos finally looked at what her son had created, her blood ran cold. It wasn't a typical child's drawing of stick figures or rainbow houses. It was a detailed map, complete with landmarks, distances, and a large X marking a specific spot in what appeared to be a cemetery. At the bottom, written in Lucas's careful 6-year-old handwriting, were the words, "This is where they put Roberto. I need to go home." What happened next would take the Santos family on a journey that would challenge everything they believed about life, death, and the impossible connections that bind us across time. Because when they followed that map to a small town 300 miles away, a place Lucas had never been, they would discover that every detail was accurate, down to the weathered headstone that bore the name Roberto Mendoza, aged 8, who had died in 1987, 3 years before Lucas was even born. The boy who remembered too much Maria Santos had always known her son was different. From the moment Lucas could speak, he had displayed an unusual maturity and a strange sadness that seemed far too heavy for such small shoulders. While other toddlers babbled about cartoons and toys, Lucas would make cryptic comments about before, and the other house, and when I was bigger. At first, Maria and her husband Carlos dismissed these statements as typical childhood imagination. Lucas was their first child, and they assumed all children went through phases of elaborate pretend, play. But as Lucas grew older, his stories became more detailed, more consistent, and increasingly disturbing. He would wake up crying, not from nightmares, but from what he called sad memories. He would describe a house with blue shutters and a red door, a dog named Chico, and parents who spoke Spanish with an accent different from his own family's Mexican heritage. Most unsettling of all, he would talk about being sick, about hospitals, and about going to sleep and not waking up. "Mama," he would say with heartbreaking matter-of-factness, "I used to be Roberto. I lived in a place with big mountains, and I had different parents. But I got very sick, and then I came to be with you instead." Maria, a devout Catholic, found these statements deeply troubling. She consulted with their priest, Father Miguel, who suggested that Lucas might be processing fears about death or illness through imaginative play. He recommended prayer and patience, assuring Maria that children often outgrow such phases. But Lucas didn't outgrow it. If anything, his memories seemed to become more vivid and detailed as he approached his 6th birthday. He began describing specific events: a birthday party with a piñata shaped like a horse, a trip to see relatives in the mountains, a hospital room with yellow walls and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. At the breaking point came on a rainy Saturday morning in March. Lucas had been unusually quiet during breakfast, pushing his cereal around his bowl without eating. Suddenly, he looked up at his mother with tears in his eyes. "Mama, I need to draw something important. Roberto's family doesn't know where he is, and they're still sad. I need to show them." The map that changed everything, what Lucas drew that morning, defied explanation. A map was far too sophisticated for a 6-year-old, showing not just roads and landmarks, but elevation changes, distances marked in what appeared to be kilometers, and detailed notations about specific buildings and geographic features. Map showed a route from their home in Phoenix, Arizona, to a small town called Valle Verde in Colorado. Lucas had marked several stops along the way, including a gas station with a distinctive red roof, a restaurant shaped like a boot, and a bridge over a river. At the destination, he had drawn a detailed layout of a cemetery, complete with sections, pathways, and the exact location of a grave, marked with a simple cross. But it was the additional details that made Maria's hands shake as she studied the drawing. Lucas had written notes in the margins. Roberto's house is 3 blocks from the church. The cemetery is behind the school. There's a big tree by the gate that has a swing. He had even drawn a small portrait of a boy with dark hair and sad eyes, labeled "This is me" before. Carlos, who worked as a mechanic and prided himself on practical thinking, was skeptical. "It's just imagination, Maria. Kids see things on TV. In books, he's probably combining different images he's seen." But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was happening. That evening, after Lucas had gone to bed, she sat at her computer and began searching for Val-de-Verde, Colorado. What she found made her heart race. Val-de-Verde was indeed a real place, a small mountain town with a population of just over 2,000 people. The town's website featured photos that matched several of Lucas's drawings. The distinctive church with its red tile roof, the elementary school with the cemetery visible behind it, and even the large oak tree by the cemetery gate, complete with a rope swing. But it was what she found in the local newspaper archives that made her call Carlos over to the computer with trembling hands. The discovery the Val-de-Verde Weekly had digitized their archives going back to 1980. Maria searched for Roberto Mendoza and found what she was looking for in the obituary section from August 1987. Roberto Alejandro Mendoza, beloved son of Miguel and Carmen Mendoza, passed away peacefully on August 15, 1987, after a courageous battle with leukemia. He was 8 years old. Roberto loved animals, especially his dog Chico, and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. He is survived by his parents, his grandparents Elena and Jose Mendoza, and numerous aunts, uncles, and cousins. Services will be held at St. Anthony's Catholic Church, with burial at Val-de-Verde Cemetery. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations to the Children's Cancer Research Fund. The obituary was accompanied by a small black and white photograph of a boy who looked remarkably similar to Lucas, the same dark hair, the same serious eyes, even the same slight dimple in his left cheek. Carlos stared at the screen in stunned silence. "This has to be a coincidence," he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maria continued searching and found more references to Roberto in the local paper. There was a story about a fundraiser held for his medical expenses, featuring a photo of him with a golden retriever identified as Chico. There was coverage of a birthday party held at the hospital, where Roberto had specifically requested a horse-shaped pinata. There was even a mention of the yellow walls in the pediatric ward where he had spent his final weeks. Every detail matched what Lucas had been saying for years. "Carlos," Maria whispered, "how could Lucas know these things? We've never been to Colorado. We don't know anyone there. He's never seen these newspapers or photos." Carlos had no answer. For the first time since Lucas had started talking about Roberto, he began to consider that something impossible might be happening. The decision to search. The next morning, Maria showed Lucas the newspaper articles. His reaction was immediate and emotional. He pointed to Roberto's photo and began crying. "That's me," he said simply. "That's how I looked before. See? I told you I had different parents." He studied the map on the computer screen, comparing it to his own drawing. "Yes, that's right. The cemetery is here, behind the school. And Roberto's grave is right there, under the big tree. His mama and papa put flowers there sometimes, but they don't know he's okay now." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. "Lucas, how do you know about the flowers?" "Because I can see them sometimes in my dreams. Roberto's mama still cries for him. She doesn't know he became me, so she thinks he's gone forever. But he's not gone. He's right here." Lucas pointed to his own chest. "I think we should go tell her." The idea was crazy. Drive 300 miles to a town they'd never been to, based on the claims of a 6-year-old who believed he was the reincarnation of a boy who had died before he was born? Carlos's practical mind rebelled against the notion, but Maria couldn't stop thinking about the grieving parents mentioned in the obituary. Miguel and Carmen Mendoza had lost their 8-year-old son nearly 4 years ago. If there was even a chance that Lucas could provide them with some comfort, didn't they have an obligation to try? What if he's right? She asked Carlos that night. What if somehow, impossibly, Lucas really is connected to this boy? What if we could help that family find some peace? Carlos was quiet for a long time. Finally, he sighed. The map is incredibly detailed. If Lucas is wrong, if none of this matches reality, then we'll know it's just imagination. But if he's right, then we'll have to figure out what that means. They decided to make the trip during Lucas's spring break from school. They would follow his map, visit the places he had drawn, and see if his claims held up to reality. If they did, they would try to find Roberto's family and ... Well, they would figure out that part when they came to it. The journey begins. The drive to Valle Verde took them through some of the most beautiful landscape in the American Southwest, but Maria barely noticed the scenery. She was too focused on watching Lucas's reactions as they traveled. Every landmark he had marked on his map appeared exactly where he had indicated: the red-roofed gas station, the boot-shaped restaurant, the bridge over the Arkansas River. At each stop, Lucas would point out details he had somehow known in advance. The bathroom in that gas station has a broken door, he said at their first stop. He was right. That restaurant has the best apple pie, but you have to ask for extra cinnamon, he commented at lunch. The waitress confirmed that their apple pie was indeed famous, and that most regulars did request extra cinnamon. Carlos kept a detailed log of each accurate prediction, his skepticism gradually giving way to amazement and growing unease. By the time they reached the Colorado border, he had documented over 20 specific details that Lucas had known in advance. Despite never having traveled this route before, as they climbed into the mountains, Lucas became increasingly excited and emotional. We're almost there, he kept saying. Roberto's home is very close now. When they crested the final hill and Valle Verde came into view, Lucas pressed his face against the window and began crying. There it is, he whispered. There's the church and the school. And, oh, there's the cemetery. Roberto is there. The town looked exactly as Lucas had drawn it. The church with its red tile roof sat in the center of the small downtown area. The elementary school was visible on a hill overlooking the town, and behind it, just as Lucas had indicated, was a small cemetery surrounded by a wrought iron fence. The moment of truth, they drove directly to the cemetery, following Lucas's map. The large oak tree by the gate was exactly where he had drawn it, complete with the rope swing he had somehow known would be there. Lucas led them confidently through the cemetery, navigating the pathways as if he had walked them countless times before. It's this way, he said, heading toward the older section of the cemetery. Roberto's grave is under the big tree next to the stone angel. They found it exactly where Lucas had indicated. The headstone was simple granite, weathered by mountain winters. Roberto Alejandro Mendoza, beloved Sun March, 1979, August 15th, 1987. Forever in our hearts. Fresh flowers lay at the base of the stone-white roses and baby's breath, still damp with morning dew. Someone had been there recently. Just as Lucas had said. Lucas knelt beside the grave and placed his small hand on the headstone. Hi, Roberto, he said softly. I came back to visit. I wanted to tell your mama and papa that you're okay, that you're with me now. Maria and Carlos stood in stunned silence, watching their 6-year-old son have a conversation with a gravestone as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Every detail of Lucas's map had been accurate. Every prediction had come true. They were standing at the grave of a boy who had died 3 years before their son was born. Yet Lucas knew intimate details about his life, his death, and his family. "Mama," Lucas said, looking up at Maria with tears in his eyes, "can we go? Find Roberto's parents now? I think they need to know he's not really gone." Finding the family Valley-Verg was small enough that finding the Mendoza family wasn't difficult. The local phone book listed only one, Miguel Mendoza, and the address was just 3 blocks from the church, exactly as Lucas had indicated on his map. The house was a modest adobe structure with blue shutters and a red door. Another detail Lucas had mentioned years before. A golden retriever lounged on the front porch, and Maria's heart skipped a beat when she realized this might be Chico, the dog Roberto had loved. Carlos knocked on the door while Maria held Lucas's hand, both of them nervous about how to explain their presence. An older woman answered, perhaps Roberto's grandmother, based on the obituary they had read. "Excuse me," Carlos began in Spanish. "We're looking for Miguel and Carmen Mendoza. We've come from Arizona, and we have something important to discuss with them about their son Roberto." The woman's face immediately grew sad and wary. "Roberto has been gone for many years," she said softly. "What could you possibly want to discuss?" Before Carlos could answer, Lucas stepped forward. "Senora Elena," he said, addressing the woman, by a name they had never told him. "I'm Lucas, but I used to be Roberto. I came to tell you that he's okay, that he's not sad anymore." The woman's face went white. She stared at Lucas for a long moment, taking in his features, his expression, something indefinable that seemed to recognize. "Dios mío," she whispered. You look just like him. But how do you know my name? How do you know about Roberto?" "Because I remember being him," Lucas said simply. "I remember you making me soup when I was sick, and I remember Chico sleeping on my bed, and I remember the yellow room in the hospital where I went to sleep the last time." Elena's hands began to shake. "Miguel, Carmen," she called into the house. "Come quickly. There's someone here you need to meet." The reunion, what followed, was one of the most emotionally charged encounters Maria had ever witnessed. Miguel and Carmen Mendoza, now in their 50s, came to the door expecting to meet strangers. Instead, they found themselves face to face with a 6-year-old boy who somehow knew intimate details about their deceased son's life. Lucas looked up at them with recognition and joy. "Mama Carmen, Papa Miguel, I missed you so much. I'm sorry I had to go away, but I came back to tell you I'm okay." Carmen gasped and sank to her knees, bringing herself to Lucas's eye level. "Who are you?" she whispered. "How do you know us?" "I'm Roberto," Lucas said matter-of-factly. "I know I look different now, and I have different parents, but inside, I'm still me. I remember everything the horse pinata at my birthday party, the way you used to sing to me when I couldn't sleep, how Papa Miguel taught me to whistle." To demonstrate, Lucas whistled a complex melody that made Miguel's eyes fill with tears. That's the song I used to whistle while I worked in the garage," he said in amazement. "Roberto was the only one who could whistle it back to me." Carmen was crying now, reaching out to touch Lucas's face. "You have his eyes," she whispered, "and that little dimple. Roberto had that same dimple." Lucas hugged her spontaneously. "I know you've been sad, Mama Carmen. I know you put flowers on Roberto's grave and talk to him sometimes. But you don't have to be sad anymore, because I'm right here. I just look different now." The verification over the next several hours, the two families sat together while Lucas provided detail after detail that only Roberto could have known. He described the layout of the house, including a secret hiding place behind the water heater where Roberto had kept his treasures. When they checked, they found a small box containing Roberto's collection of unusual rocks and a photo of Chico as a puppy. Lucas knew about family members who hadn't been mentioned in any public records. Roberto's cousin Maria, who lived in Denver. His uncle Carlos, who had taught him to play guitar. His great-aunt Rosa, who made the best tamales in the family. He remembered specific Christmas presents, family jokes, and private conversations that had never been shared outside the family. Most convincingly, Lucas knew about Roberto's final days in the hospital. He described conversations with doctors and nurses, the view from his hospital room window, and the last words he had spoken to his parents before falling into his final coma. Carmen confirmed every detail, sobbing as she realized that somehow, impossibly, her son's consciousness had survived and found its way into this other child. "He told me he wasn't afraid," Lucas said, holding Carmen's hand. Roberto knew he was going to go to sleep and not wake up in that body, but he wasn't scared because he knew he would find another family to love him. "He wanted me to tell you that he chose good parents this time too, and that he's happy." Miguel, who had been largely silent throughout the afternoon, finally spoke. "If you're really Roberto," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "then you'll remember what I promised you the night before you died." Lucas looked at him seriously. "You promised that you would take care of Chico for me, and that you would visit my grave every month and tell me about what was happening in the family. And you promised that if there was any way for me to come back and let you know I was okay, you would believe it, even if it seemed impossible." Miguel broke down completely. "Those were my exact words," he whispered. "I made that promise to my dying son, and I've kept it for 4 years. I never told anyone what I said that night." The healing, the discovery that Roberto's consciousness had somehow survived in Lucas brought profound healing to both families. For the Mendozas, it provided closure and comfort they had never expected to find. Their son wasn't truly gone. He was living a new life, healthy and happy, with parents who loved him just as much as they had. For the Santos family, it provided answers to years of questions about Lucas's unusual behavior and mysterious knowledge. They finally understood why their son had always seemed older than his years, why he carried sadness that seemed too heavy for a child, and why he had always talked about before. The two families decided to stay in touch, creating an extended family connection that honored both Roberto's past and Lucas's present. Lucas would visit Valle Verde every summer, maintaining his connection to Roberto's history while continuing to build his own life as Lucas Santos. Carmen and Miguel found peace in knowing that their son's spirit lived on, while Maria and Carlos gained a deeper understanding of their remarkable child. Lucas, for his part, seemed relieved to finally have his memories validated and his two identities acknowledged. The broader implications word of Lucas's story spread through Valle Verde and eventually reached researchers who study cases of children who claim to remember past lives. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a psychiatrist from the University of Colorado who specializes in consciousness studies, came to interview Lucas and document his case. "This is one of the most compelling cases I've encountered," Dr. Walsh explained to both families. "The level of verifiable detail, the emotional consistency, and the therapeutic impact on all involved parties makes this a remarkable example of what we call reincarnation-type experiences in children." She documented over 200 specific claims Lucas had made about Roberto's life, 187 of which could be independently verified through family records, medical files, and other documentation. The accuracy rate was unprecedented in her research. "Whether we understand the mechanism or not," Dr. Walsh concluded, "something extraordinary has occurred here. This child has access to memories and information that conventional science cannot explain, and the healing impact on both families has been profound." Living with the extraordinary today, Lucas is a typical 8-year-old who loves soccer, video games, and spending time with his friends. He still remembers being Roberto, but those memories have become integrated into his identity as Lucas rather than dominating it. He speaks of Roberto in the past tense now, as someone he used to be rather than someone he still is. The Santos family has learned to live with the extraordinary nature of their son's experience. They've connected with other families who have had similar experiences, finding a community of people who understand the unique challenges and gifts that come with raising a child who remembers a past life. The Mendoza family has found a new lease on life, their grief transformed into wonder and gratitude. They've become advocates for other bereaved families, sharing their story of how love can transcend even death. Lucas continues to visit Roberto's grave every summer, but now it's a celebration rather than a mourning. He brings flowers and tells Roberto's spirit about his life as Lucas, maintaining the connection while honoring both identities. The mystery continues. The case of Lucas Santos and Roberto Mendoza raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness, identity, and survival after death. How could a child born in Arizona in 1990 have detailed memories of a boy who died in Colorado in 1987? How could he draw an accurate map to places he had never been, or know intimate details about a family he had never met? Science doesn't yet have answers to these questions, but the evidence is undeniable. Two families have been forever changed by an experience that challenges our understanding of life, death, and the continuity of consciousness. Perhaps the most important lesson from their story isn't about proving or disproving reincarnation, but about the power of love to transcend all boundaries. Roberto's love for his family was so strong that it somehow found a way to reach across death itself, bringing healing and comfort to those he left behind. Lucas's story reminds us that there are mysteries in this world, far greater than our current understanding can encompass. It challenges us to remain open to possibilities we might otherwise dismiss, and to approach the inexplicable with wonder rather than skepticism that in the end, whether we call it reincarnation, genetic memory, or something else entirely, the story of Lucas and Roberto is ultimately about the enduring power of love, the importance of family, and the beautiful mystery of human consciousness that continues to surprise and humble us. The map that Lucas drew that rainy morning led to more than just a grave. It led to healing, understanding, and a profound reminder that the bonds of love are stronger than death itself. If this story has touched your heart, if it's made you think about the mysteries that surround us every day, or if it's reminded you of the incredible power of love to transcend all boundaries, please consider subscribing to our channel. We're dedicated to sharing more stories like this one, stories that explore the beautiful, inexplicable, and deeply human experiences that connect us all. Your subscription helps us continue bringing these remarkable stories to light, ensuring that voices like Roberto's and Lucas's continue to inspire and amaze us all.